This story about the lost art of letter writing. It all started on a rainy afternoon in March, the kind of day when the sky is a dull gray and the rain falls in a steady, rhythmic patter, as if the world itself is taking a deep breath. I had just moved into my grandparents' old house, a quaint cottage tucked away in a small town that time seemed to have forgotten. The decision to move there was a spontaneous one, driven by a need to escape the relentless pace of city life and the growing sense of disconnection I felt from everything around me. The house was a treasure trove of memories. My grandparents had lived there for over 50 years, and every corner, every piece of furniture, seemed to tell a story. I spent my first few days there unpacking boxes and exploring the nooks and crannies of the old house. The smell of aged wood and the creak of the floorboards beneath my feet were oddly comforting, like a warm embrace from the past. It was on that rainy afternoon that I stumbled upon the box. I was in the attic, rummaging through a pile of old belongings that had been left untouched for years. The box was tucked away in a corner, covered in dust and cobwebs. It was an unassuming thing, made of worn-out cardboard with faded edges, but something about it caught my eye. I carried the box downstairs and set it on the kitchen table, curious about what it might contain. As I opened the lid, I was greeted by a stack of old letters, neatly tied together with a piece of twine. The paper was yellowed with age, and the handwriting was elegant, a cursive script that spoke of a different era. I untied the twine and carefully unfolded the first letter. The letter was dated September 12th, 1945. It was from my grandfather to my grandmother, written during the final days of World War II. As I read the words, I felt as though I had been transported back in time. My grandfather wrote about the uncertainty of the future, the hope that the war would soon be over, and his longing to return home to my grandmother. His words were filled with emotion, a raw honesty that I found both beautiful and heart-wrenching. I spent the rest of the afternoon reading through the letters. There were dozens of them, spanning several decades. They chronicled my grandparents' life together, their courtship, their marriage, the birth of their children, and the everyday joys and struggles they faced. Each letter was a window into their world, a glimpse of the love and connection that had sustained them through the years. As I read, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. In today's world of instant messaging and social media, the art of letter writing had all but disappeared. The discovery of the letters planted a seed of an idea in my mind. What if I were to start writing letters myself? Not emails or text messages, but real, handwritten letters. But who would I write to? I had no one in my life with whom I shared that kind of connection, no one who would appreciate a letter written on paper rather than sent through a screen. And then it struck me, what if I wrote to strangers? There was something thrilling about the idea of reaching out to someone I didn't know, of forming a connection through words without the preconceptions that often come with face-to-face interactions. I decided to give it a try. I spent the next few days gathering supplies. I bought a stack of high-quality stationery, a fountain pen with smooth black ink, and a book of postage stamps. I also did some research online, looking for websites where people exchanged letters with strangers. I found a few communities dedicated to this very purpose, places where people from all over the world posted their addresses, hoping to receive letters from like-minded individuals. I started writing my first letter on a Saturday morning. The rain had returned, and the sound of it tapping against the windows provided a soothing backdrop as I put pen to paper. I introduced myself, sharing a little about my life and how I had come to discover the box of letters. I wrote about my grandparents and how their correspondence had inspired me to reach out to others. I didn't know who would receive the letter, but that didn't matter. The act of writing itself was what I found most fulfilling. I mailed the letter the next day, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Would anyone respond? Would they think I was strange for writing to a complete stranger? I pushed these doubts aside and reminded myself that the purpose of this experiment was to rediscover the art of connection, to see if it was possible to forge a bond through the simple act of writing. The first response: a new friendship begins. 2 weeks passed, and I had nearly forgotten about the letter when I received a response. The envelope was postmarked from a small town in Ohio, and the return address bore the name Margaret. I tore She had come across my letter on one of the websites I had posted it to and felt compelled to write back. She shared stories of her life, her love of gardening, her grandchildren who visited her on weekends, and her memories of a time when letter writing was a common practice. As I read Margaret's words, I felt a connection forming. Despite the difference in our ages and backgrounds, there was something comforting about her letter, as though I were speaking with an old friend. I wrote back immediately, thanking her for her response and sharing more about my life in my grandparents' house. Over the next few months, Margaret and I continued to exchange letters. With each letter, our friendship grew stronger. We shared our thoughts, our hopes, and our fears. We spoke about the challenges we faced, the joys we experienced, and the small, everyday moments that brought us happiness. It was a friendship unlike any I had known before, deep, sincere, and based on the simple exchange of words on paper. Expanding the circle, new connections, and unexpected friendships. Encouraged by my correspondence with Margaret, I decided to write to more people. I posted my address on several letter-writing communities, each time sharing a little about myself and my love for handwritten letters. The responses started to trickle in slowly at first, and then more steadily. I soon found myself corresponding with people from all over the world: Italy, Japan, Australia, Canada, and beyond. Each letter I received was unique, reflecting the personality and experiences of the sender. There was Elena, a young artist from Florence who wrote about her struggles with creative block and her love for the Renaissance. There was Hiroshi, a retired engineer from Kyoto who shared stories of his travels and his passion for photography. There was also Liam, a teenager from Dublin who wrote about his dreams of becoming a writer and his love for Irish folklore. Through these letters, I learned about different cultures, perspectives, and ways of life. I found myself eagerly anticipating each new letter, wondering what stories and insights it would bring. The letters became a source of joy and inspiration, a reminder of the richness and diversity of human experience. One of the most unexpected friendships I formed was with Maria, a woman in her late 20s from Brazil. Maria's first letter was brief, but heartfelt. She wrote about how she had recently lost her job and was feeling lost and uncertain about the future. Her words resonated with me, reminding me of my own struggles with finding purpose and direction in life. I wrote back to Maria, sharing my own experiences and offering words of encouragement. Our correspondence quickly deepened, and we began to write to each other regularly. Maria's letters were filled with emotion, her fears, her dreams, her frustrations, and her hopes for the future. Through our letters, we supported each other, offering advice, comfort, and a listening ear. Maria's friendship became a source of strength for me, and I found myself looking forward to her letters with great anticipation. She wrote about her efforts to find a new job, her experiences with therapy, and the small victories she I also learned that connection doesn't require physical proximity. Despite the distance between us, the friendships I formed through letters were just as real and meaningful as any I had in person. In some ways, they were even more profound, as the act of writing allowed us to share our thoughts and emotions in a way that was unfiltered and genuine. The letters became a mirror, reflecting not just the lives of those I corresponded with, but also my own inner world. As time went on, I noticed subtle changes within myself. I became more patient, more introspective, and more open to the world around me. The simplicity of letter writing, putting pen to paper, folding the letter, sealing the envelope, became a meditative process, a way of reconnecting with the tangible aspects of life that had been overshadowed by the digital age. One day, as I was going through the stack of letters I had accumulated, I realized just how much my life had transformed since that rainy afternoon when I first discovered my grandparents' letters. I was no longer the person who had felt lost and disconnected. The letters had rekindled a sense of belonging, not just to the people I had written to, but to the broader tapestry of humanity. The reunion, bridging generations. One particularly poignant moment came when I received a letter from someone who had known my grandparents. The letter was from an elderly woman named Edith who lived in a nearby town. She had come across my address through one of the letter-writing communities and had recognized my last name. Edith wrote about how she had been close friends with my grandmother in their youth and shared fond memories of their time together. Reading Edith's letter was like hearing my grandmother's voice echoing from the past. She spoke of the early years of my grandparents' marriage, their struggles during the post-war period, and the joy they found in simple pleasures like gardening and evening walks. Edith's words were filled with warmth and nostalgia, and as I read them, I felt a deeper connection to my family's history. I decided to visit Edith, and when we met, it was as if the years melted away. She welcomed me into her home, and we spent the afternoon talking about my grandparents, sharing stories, and flipping through old photo albums. Edith's stories brought my grandparents to life in a way that no photograph or document ever could. I learned about their dreams, their quirks, and the love they had for each other, a love that had endured through time and distance, much like the letters they had exchanged. The legacy of letters, a new beginning. As I continued to write and receive letters, I began to think about how I could preserve and share this experience with others. The letters I had collected were more than just pieces of paper. They were a testament to the enduring power of human connection. I wanted to ensure that this lost art would not fade away, but instead inspire others to rediscover the beauty of handwritten communication. I decided to compile some of the most meaningful letters into a book, a collection that would tell the story of my journey and the connections I had formed along the way. I spent months selecting the letters, organizing them, and writing reflections on what each one had taught me. The process was cathartic, allowing me to relive the experiences and emotions I had felt throughout my journey. When the book was finally published, I was overwhelmed by the response. People from all walks of life reached out to share their own experiences with letter writing, their memories of a time when letters were the primary means of communication, and their desire to rekindle that lost art. The book became a catalyst for a small but growing movement, one that encouraged people to put down their phones, pick up a pen, and reconnect with others in a more meaningful way. Epilogue: A Life Enriched. It has been 2 years since I found that box of letters in my grandparents' attic, and my life has been enriched in ways I never could have imagined. The friendships I have formed, the lessons I have learned, and the sense of connection I have rediscovered have all left an indelible mark on me. I still live in my grandparents' house, and the box of letters now sits on a shelf in my study, a reminder of the journey that began with a simple act of curiosity. I continue to write letters, both to old friends and new acquaintances, and each one brings with it the joy of connection and the thrill of discovery. The experience has taught me that in a world that is increasingly fast-paced and disconnected, there is something profoundly powerful about slowing down and taking the time to connect with others in a meaningful way. The art of letter writing, once thought lost, is alive and well, and in its revival, I have found not only a way to connect with others, but also a way to connect with myself. And so, as I sit at my desk, pen in hand, I am reminded of the timeless wisdom of my grandparents, the value of patience, the importance of human connection, and the beauty of a life well lived. Their letters were a gift, not just to each other, but to me as well, and through them, I have discovered a path that has brought me peace, fulfillment, and a renewed appreciation for the simple joys of life. I hope you like this story. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe this channel.